Yep.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, we're guests here at the City University of London, and we just heard a presentation about the MICL, Master Innovation and Creativity and Leadership. We're very happy to have you here and answer some questions. Maybe it's nice that you, Marianne Kahn, Sarah James, and Alwyn, and I didn't remember.
Alwyn de Looy.
Alwyn de Looy. And as you can hear from his accent, he's Dutch actually. So, but we're going to do the interview in English. Our master program is about innovation in social organization, management of organizations. And well, maybe I will give the first question to you.
Well, and I'll give it back to Sean.
Okay,
she
great.
had a wonderful question.
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
I will respond to that.
Yes.
Okay.
I wonder when I listen to your information and your presentation, and I'm working as consultant in education and childcare, and I have a question because you education your students at a new leadership and new style of innovation and creativity, and I have some questions about the regular organizations where there may be come at work. Is there a struggle? Is there a gap? Can you tell me something about that?
Something about the MICL students' journeys, yes, I guess.
Yeah.
You sound as though you have an answer ready.
Yeah.
Sorry. Your question: is there a gap in organisations between
new and old leadership, maybe?
New and old thinking.
New and old thinking.
Well, I think the short answer is yes.
Yes.
Provided we can make out in almost all of the organisations where our students come from. And Sarah can give you probably the actual breakdown, but we have many who've come through from local government, from the health service, from charities, as well as people from very large commercial organisations and people from very small ones. We have had a fair number of people come through the programme who've changed their career, which I think is interesting. And we've had many who in their final projects have attempted to create some change in their organisations.
Yes, so let me see, about to follow up on the figures, and not to forget that some of the students are running their own business as well in the mix, and probably about a third of the students carry on in the same job as they had when they started the programme, a third goes somewhere different, and a third maybe kind of progress within the organisation they were already in, so it kind of divides up people going all sorts of different directions after the programme. In terms of gaps in the organisation that people need to cross, yes, I think sometimes people come onto the programme wanting themselves to be more creative in their leadership or management practices and seeing that that's difficult in the organisation they're currently in, and of course there's two ways to respond. Either you try to kind of change the organisation that you're in, or you move to a different organisation that has a different approach to kind of leadership, management, etc. And I think students can go both ways.
Yes.
Depending partly on where they are in the organisation. Obviously, it's quite difficult to change an organisation kind of from the lower levels. Other people are in more fortunate positions. So we've got one student this year who's kind of moved into a new organisation and implemented a whole load of changes designed to bring about a more creative climate in that organisation, and in fact is about to do his dissertation on whether that's worked, and so to look at whether that's more or less powerful than the kind of individual predispositions that people have within the organisation. So if you are lucky enough to be able to implement kind of changes to hopefully bring about a more creative climate, is that going to be effective for everyone, or are there going to be people in the organisation who just are not comfortable working in that way? In that case, what do you do? So yes.
And are students prepared that this might happen? So you come back to your own organisation, and it might happen that or either you develop in your own organisation, which is kind of natural, but also 1/3 takes off and leaves. Are they prepared for that? Do you prepare them somehow? Do you? Well, warning is too big of a word, but
don't forget a lot of people who do an MBA change their jobs,
yeah.
and so, which is one of the reasons why a lot of companies no longer sponsor students through an MBA.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about
Yeah.
we're not talking about anything that's unusual in the
No.
management education stream.
No, okay.
And if you're attracted to do the Masters in Innovation, Creativity and Leadership rather than an MBA, you're also self-selecting yourself to be a certain kind of
Yes.
person.
Okay.
And we now have younger overseas students who come and do the course for a year. So I think we're mainly here talking about the people who are working part-time and going back into their organisations every day.
Yeah.
And the only thing I'd like to add is that many of them, as teachers, it's exciting to see the way they do take the ideas straight back and use them.
Yeah.
Have some of them found that uncomfortable? Yes.
Mm.
Have some of them come because they knew something was uncomfortable before they did the program? Yes. But it's very hard to do it with small numbers. You can't do. You can't. We don't have hard and fast data on that.
No.
And Alan, you're doing research down here.
Yes.
Can you tell them something about it?
Sure. I'm a PhD student at the Center for Creativity, which the MICL is also, the master degree is also a part of. And I research how you can design technologies to help regulate emotions, and because emotions have a strong connection to creative task performance, these type of technologies can help people be more or less creative. Trying to figure out how we can make something that actually works. For example, we did a recent experimental test where we tried to basically hack the function of the human body in emotion regulation. So for example, when you see something you like and you smile, it's nicer than when you see something you like and you don't smile. So the body provides feedback, and we try to incorporate these bodily feedback mechanisms in how people use the technology. Actually, it turned out that it worked. People were, in our experimental setup, people were a little bit happier afterwards. And because they were a little bit happier, they were a little bit more flexible in their thinking. And they could come up with more creative, original ideas. It's weird, but
It does remind me of people with autistic disorders who can who have difficulties reading somebody's face,
Yes.
who could use when you develop that product as an app maybe to read someone's face. So you understand? Am I clear? Can I make myself clear? You understand what I mean?
I would like to say yes, but I don't.
I think there's been quite a lot of psychological research on mapping the physiognomy,
Yes.
mapping those little changes,
Yeah.
and getting the gradations in them, and also some very interesting work about the way in which changing our facial expression induces the mood that
Yeah.
expression speaks
Yes.
to.
And maybe it's also cultural based.
Mhm.
That this expression
Yeah.
in Western Europe means something else.
There
than
are
Yes.
apparently
Yeah.
three, I've been reading about this, there are three very common ones: surprise, fear, and another one. And those are shared across all cultures. But yes, many of them are very
Yeah.
cultural.
Yeah.
Very subtle.
Discuss.
Of course, this master program of ours is also connected to University of Applied Sciences. So when I hear you talking, how could we apply this in Holland, or are you not that far yet with your research?
I would like to be that far,
Yeah.
but we're basically in the stage of trying to demonstrate that it's possible. And now that we are kind of able to demonstrate it, we can start to think about what we can do with it. So that will be the next stage, to find applications, find the limits as well of what's possible with this approach. So, you can think of examples like new technologies where you use the whole body to interact with a screen, for instance, with information.
Yeah.
You've all seen it in movies like Minority Report.
Yeah.
And suddenly, when you can use your whole body to use technology, we should think about how we can do that, how that impacts our emotions, and therefore also our creativity.
Yeah.
So that would be an implication.
Okay. Well, you've done your studies in England,
Yes.
and you come from Holland.
Yeah.
What would be the biggest thing that we in Holland could learn from the UK?
Obviously nothing. So what always strikes me is that in Holland we have this clear separation between a university that does research and a university that does applied sciences. And here things seem to blend a
Mingle,
little more.
yeah.
And it might depend on the university as well a little bit. But I like that a lot. To me, there shouldn't be a difference. It should be kind of a continuum of fundamental work going into applied work. And that's what I like, at least about this university. They're open to that.
Do you have a final question?
I have maybe it's a thinking for me. I read an article from the framing of the big society and the framing of the participatiesamenleving, and that said that the big society is positive. The government has heeft een andere insteek gekozen. Help mij even.
Has really turned it around.
Precies, het
Until
turnaround.
cutting costs. And
Yes,
that really
and in the
influences.
Netherlands, we said the owner and the community heeft de schuld, of
Is the blend.
is the blend. And how is your vision about the language of the Swift that we make in the Netherlands and that you make in London?
Around the big society.
About
Yeah.
the big society.
Big
Yes.
question, slightly beyond our remit.
I'm
It's
thinking
very
about-
political. Yes. Inequality, there's so much debate about this. Inequality is a big issue here. We're much more than in the Northern European states. Much debated. And of course, there have been some interesting research studies recently. It's a good example of where pure research can become something much debated in public ideas. We heard the same happens with creativity, using creative practices. But you'll see, there's just a tremendous amount of inequality here. And people are very aware of it.
I think there are some really nice kind of developments around social innovation here. So organisations like Nesta and the Design Council sponsoring application of design thinking, for example, in addressing social challenges around housing, sustainability, etc. Which you could see. So you could see as a positive interpretation of the kind of big society idea. So crowdsourcing ideas for housing stock improvements, for example. I think that's the kind of nice side of big society for me.
You also make a connection from your program to that more political or movement you've got in the UK right now.
We don't
Are there
have
connections
social
with
science in
how-
that sense.
Okay.
We have no sociology
No.
in this program.
No.
So the closest we come to it is more psychology.
Yeah.
And we don't have economics either. I mean, we could. We have people teaching those issues, but it's not political in that sense.
No.
It's much more rooted within management and business from that point of view.
And it's not from a principal point of view that you don't have it in, but maybe it's your next stage of development.
Here it would be a very different marketplace almost.
Yeah.
I think my feeling from little I know about Holland is you have a very strong commitment to public service.
Yeah.
If you participate as a university lecturer, you must go and be part of local government. That doesn't exist here. So it's unusual. Leon Maiden, who isn't here today, he's doing work with the local council, but he is himself a councillor. He stands for election, he works locally. And I don't know of anyone else involved in the MICL who's in that position.
No, I mean the work that Graham's doing, that I spoke about briefly at the end, is kind of in that space of using data to empower people to come up with kind of ideas about improving their own services, that sort of thing.
Yes.
So giving the data back to people who originated it.
Yes.
I have another question. This program exists for 5 years now, 5-6 years. And could you describe how the program has changed from then until now and over 5 years? So.
Okay. Well, so there's some kind of obvious changes, like for example the fact that in the first year we only had part-time students and we're now inviting full-time students, and that's had an interesting effect on the kind of mix of students in the class, as I mentioned. So we have more international students, which is lovely as a result of offering full-time places. Curriculum-wise, I mean, I think each module has learned as we've gone along. I know that I've learned about how to present material as part of an interdisciplinary masters as opposed to a single disciplinary masters. And I think because that's something, it's quite an unusual thing to do, such an interdisciplinary program, I think. And so we've all got learning to do, or have done learning, and we shall have more learning to do around that. Around sort of how you kind of present the links between, or how you encourage staff and students to experience the links between the disciplines, as well as teaching a particular subject within that framework. So yeah, those kind of things I think we're sort of developing.
And it's been helpful to see students through the final projects over the years. That's really helped us as a team to better understand how the different pieces are fitting together for the students, definitely.
And where do you see your curriculum over 5 years? What will be development you're going to? Is it something?
Yeah, I don't have in mind to change the fundamental curriculum at all. I think the mix that we've got works really nicely, and for me it's about kind of learning how to make the whole thing sustainable is the kind of the thing to take away to sort of grow the team, and just carry on learning about what we're trying to do right now. So I think we've still got some way to go on that before we look at any fundamental. I don't know if we want to look at any fundamental changes. It is what it is, and it's good.
And one thing, we've been a very stable team, which we've all often talked about, that since 2008, certainly all but one of the modules has remained with very, very steady personnel, which makes a big difference, and of course is unusual in university life. So in some ways, change will probably almost certainly come about with changes of personnel.
Yeah.
Maybe the last question, and you told us last year, it is not, well for us we only see this master. We are mistaken when we think that the whole of the City University of London is interdisciplinary, and that it all went very smoothly to create such a program. So which type of change did you have to conquer? Which type of courage did you have to do, and what type of urgency led to this master? Could you tell us something?
So, I think we both have stories to share here. It arose following the kind of vision, I suppose, of the then Vice Chancellor to support more interdisciplinary work across the university, and his idea to offer seed funding to a small number of interdisciplinary centres, one of which was the Centre for Creativity. So that's where it came from. And before that, I suppose, it came from a university research day where there was always interest in the themes of, well, really applied creativity to start with across the university. So that's sort of where it came from. In terms of challenges during the development of the Masters, I think it's an ongoing challenge actually to maintain an interdisciplinary centre and Masters programme in an institution that's structured, I mean, as most universities, certainly in the UK, are around individual disciplines. So it's stovepiped. Schools tend to talk more to themselves than to each other, sort of thing. And I think, that's an ongoing process of kind of understanding how interdisciplinary work can happen within that structure or across that structure.
I guess the only thing I'd like to add is something about the need for somebody in the team, I guess it was mainly Neil, but to some degree Clive, to be senior enough to know how the institution works and to know how to pilot things through. So there was a meeting with the new Vice Chancellor when he came in about this, and he expressed some surprise that we've been allowed to get away with it. So it is unusual. We all regard that. We realise that. And I think if we didn't have enough tacit support from our line managers in the different schools, it wouldn't happen. Speaking for myself, I have to keep what I do on the mic quite quiet. It's not as if it's not in my timesheet really, not the amount of time that has to go into it. And the same is true for several of us. We just don't want to make too much of it in our day jobs because we don't want people to ask too many questions. And when going gets tough, innovative activities like this in any institution do come under a spotlight.
but it is in the rims of the organisation that it's taking place.
So it's getting people paid, getting budgets for marketing, where things should sit institutionally, how a report should work. All of those things have raised questions of where do we sit, what are we?
Yeah.
And then the whole marketing structure was changed at the University of UK, so we had it working before, how does it work now? And all those things.
Yeah.
It has to be worked through and kept under regard, kept under review constantly. Really, it makes I think Sarah's life quite difficult as the program director.
Well, as we've seen today, the fuel I think is your passion and the revenues that you get from your master students. So we wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you.
Coming next year. So thank you very much. for
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cut. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr.
Are you going to have some lunch?
Well,
Food.
Are you going to have some lunch?
yeah.
I feel we owe you.
Right.
Procrastination.